Thank you everyone for coming. Just to let you know that we are recording the meeting so that we can send out to the region afterwards. Um, if there are colleagues that can't attend today, they will be able to see it at a later date. Just to welcome Jordan, who's our Mutual Ventures representative colleague from our delivery partner, and myself, I'm Vicky Racy. I'm the ADCS Regional Coordinator and the Project Manager for this project. Thank you very much for coming today. This is the second of our staff information webinars. We've got some key things that we're going to look at today, mainly around recruitment, some of the data indicators, and a little bit about how we're going to involve foster carers in our project. I do have a slideshow for you, so Jordan, if you're able to share the slides for me, that would be great. Thank you. And while Jordan is sharing the slides, can I remind you that if you do have any questions today, please do pop them in the question and answer section. We will try and answer as many of them as we can at the end of the meeting today. If we don't get enough chance to, we will answer the questions in a written format and then send out to you again, like we did with the first webinar. So they won't get missed if we don't answer them today, but they might get answered at a later date. Next slide, please. So our key aims are there. We're going to give you, I will give a brief overview of the Hub project, just in case anyone wasn't able to make the first meeting of this kind, so that it does give you an overview there. Then we'll go on to explain the recruitment structure and the job roles that are going to be in our Hub. I will give an overview of the data opportunities that are being presented to us via this project. And then we'll talk a little bit about how we will be involving foster carers in the design phase of this project. They will be involved all the way through, but particularly today we'll be talking about the design phase of that. Next slide, please. So just as a bit of an overview, over the last couple of years, there's been a number of pieces of work and research done around children's social care. The independent review of children's social care by Josh McAllister, the national review into the deaths of Arthur Lavinio Hughes and Star Hobson, and the Competition and Markets Authority study into children's social care placements. Those three pieces of work have kind of fed into the reforms and projects that are happening in the country at the moment. If we focus in on fostering at the moment, if you can see that little diagram there on the slide as well, that starts at application and ends with they call it an exit or a deregister in there. That's a journey of a foster carer through our system. And you can see that the statement at the top shows that at inquiry and within 2 years of approval, there's evidence of high levels of dropout. And that's kind of where this particular project is targeted, at trying to reduce that level of dropout and increase our number of foster carers and hence our children's placements at that early start of that foster caring journey. Thanks. Next slide, please. So here it kind of puts it into a more diagrammatic format for you that's looking particularly for our I'm using my mouse then, and then I realized it's not my screen, so you can't see my mouse. So particularly at that early section of our journey between inquiry and approval. So you can see that particular part of our journey is where our hub's focusing. So between those first two pink lines. And we will have a recruitment support hub for the region that will also include a targeted communications campaign around foster care recruitment. There will be some link to a foster care retention, and that will be done primarily through the Mockingbird programme. And as part of this project, each local authority will have an additional Mockingbird hub, or if they haven't got one, their first one. I won't really be talking much about that today, but I think it's worth you knowing that that's out there. And then we'll have an opportunity to do some diagnostic work and data collections around our foster care recruitment and get some information about that and about the success of the hub. And then obviously about how we apply and act on that data once we've got it in. Just to say, this particular project is being delivered at pace. So we put the original bid in for this at the end of last summer. We were approved along with 9 other clusters in the country in the autumn. And so far, we've been looking at design and implementation, working on those behind the scenes things such as collaboration agreements, data sharing, case management systems, those sorts of things. We're looking at those and designing those as we speak, going through the procurement process, etc., with a view to. So our live hub hopefully will. In April, our hub will then go live. It's a pilot project that occurred in the Northeast. If you do wish to have a look, then if you look at Fostering for the Northeast, you can have a look at that project. That went live at the end of September. So we do have some learning and information coming out from that on a regular basis. So we're not on our own in doing this at all. Thanks very much. Next slide, please. So here's our rough design for our hub. And particularly if you look at the first 3 icons on there, where we have a prospective foster carer coming through, they enter the recruitment hub and the recruitment hub supports in an initial screening. That's where the piece of work that our recruitment hub will complete. At that point, it will be referred back to the local authorities and then they can follow it up as an application and work with those prospective foster carers to bring them into that local authority family. At the top, you can also see overriding that is a peer support program, which includes experienced foster carers working with our prospective foster carers to support them and give them a buddy really early on in that process, which is probably earlier than we have done before in the region. Most of the time in the region, the prospective foster carer receives a buddy, but usually once they've gone to that initial visit stage, occasionally there's a couple of local authorities that do it earlier. But we're looking to have a prospective foster carer of some description available for them right from making that initial first inquiry, so that they are supported throughout their entire journey. Next slide, please. So here's our proposal, our data collection and analysis, our communications campaign, our R&R hub and our Mockingbird expansion. It's the R&R hub we're going to focus on today, and primarily the staff structure to start off with. And then we will talk a little bit about the data collection and analysis next. Next slide, please. So I'll leave this one up for a little while for you to have a look at. This is the planned staffing structure for our hub. As you can see, we have a hub lead, and then we have a communications lead and an assistant manager lead. Going down through the assistant lead, we can see that there are foster carer support practitioners who review the initial contacts that come in and make that contact back. We also have a hub's communication lead that links with networking support lead and hub and data IT lead within the hub. The hub is virtual, so these will predominantly be working from home roles. However, they will need to network and they will be hosted by Wiltshire, but they will work for the region. If it puts it in perspective for you, I work for the region, but I'm also hosted by Wiltshire, as they hold the financial link for the region, for the Regional Improvement Alliance. This particular one, Wiltshire holds the financial purse for this project, so they'll be hosted by Wiltshire, but the hub is a joint project for the region and led by Wiltshire and Cornwall. So Cornwall do have an equal say in the decision-making structure. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit now about the job descriptions for those roles, about the basis for employment, um, a little bit about salaries. I can't give you figures, I'm afraid, yet, and I'll tell you why in a moment. And then how we're going to look to recruit. So those are the 4 things that I'm going to talk through here. In terms of job descriptions, we do have a job description for the hub lead. I would have liked to share that with you today, but I can't. It is currently going through job evaluation. But this particular role, I can tell you about it, would look obviously to oversee the day-to-day running of the virtual hub and link in with its staff team. They would line manage the staff team, with some line managers being line management pieces being available for the 2 assistant leads as well. And then they would be supported in their line management by Wiltshire and Cornwall. They have to fit into Wiltshire's working structure, but they will have a buddy at Cornwall. The job description itself, as we said, looks after the day-to-day running and supports that staff team there, but would also have a role in the design and the tweaking of the hub, in reporting back to the operations group that oversee the strategic work of the hub and with the DFE, as well as the directors for children's services across the region, as this is a regional piece of work. So there's quite a bit of working and leadership there, both in management structures, but also in liaising and influencing across the region. The other job descriptions we will put to job evaluation when we have that one confirmed, but we do have them outlined ready. Probably of particular interest would be both the foster care support person. We're looking for people that ideally have experience in doing that initial contact back role. We want a warm, structured conversation. We'd like them to know about the region or parts of the region. It can be sub-regional because there's 4 of them. And to help make sure that we're not just a call centre. We don't want to be just a call centre. We want to have that warm offer that you currently have in that first contact in your local authorities. The jobs will be on a secondment basis, ideally. So we would like to second from the region where possible. This will mean that their current jobs remain open. Some of the key ideals around that is currently the funding is only up until March 2025. We do have plans to extend it further on than that, but we do need to make sure that we've got a worst and best case scenario in our contingency plan. So for the first year or so, it'll be on a secondment basis. If we are unable to recruit on a secondment basis, then we will offer fixed term contracts for that time. In terms of salaries, I can't tell you the salaries yet because I don't know them. They haven't been formally agreed yet. What we do know is that Wiltshire offer a no lose out clause within their secondment and salary. So if you were to second over on a higher rate than the job is offered for, you would maintain that rate. If you second over on a lower rate, then you get the higher rate that's offered for the job role. In terms of recruitment, as soon as the jobs are available, we plan to advertise. They would be advertised on all local authority websites, but they will also come out regionally to your link leads. So we'll also advertise them internally, etc., as well, making sure that we've got a good wide offer there. So they'll have both external and internal sharing across that. It will be a normal application process. Electronic is an application process for Wiltshire. So you would log on to their hub and fill in their electronic forms. But more details about that when obviously those roles are ready. We anticipate the hub lead role being ready in the very near future, in the next couple of weeks, to be advertised. So if that gives you an idea of when you might be looking at, and then the rest would follow initially with the communications and assistant leads and then down to the data comms and foster caring support officers in 2 to 3 phases, depending on how quickly they go through job evaluation for that. All of the team members will be hosted by Wiltshire. I think I've said that before, but they'll have to follow their structures for employment, and you would be given IT resources and structural support via Wiltshire's structural systems, essentially. This does mean potentially in local authorities that if you were to be seconded from your local authority to the hub, then potentially there may need to be some backfill within the region, and that would need to be discussed with the fostering participation operations lead group and at the strategic level. But we do understand those concerns. Potentially, if you were not to apply for a job on the hub and you do have one of those very, very frontline roles, particularly managing and dealing with initial contacts, then there would be a small amount of capacity additionally in that particular local authority. That said, when you receive those referrals back through to you, they would still need to be uploaded onto the system. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But those sort of options are still there. So while you might gain a small amount of capacity within the region, as it stands at the minute, we've said that the hub isn't funded beyond 2025, but there would still be roles within that would need to potentially be picked up and linked with. And also in terms of working with the hub, there'll need to be link staff liaising with the hub on a regular basis as well. So it's more likely to be a slight change to that very frontline role than more than anything else, really. Next slide, please. I would never make a newsreader, would I? I say far too much. Okay, so that's kind of it in regards to staffing. Like I say, at the end, we'll take questions. Please feel free to pop them in the Q&A now. There's no reason why you can't, but we won't answer them until the end. But like I said, they won't get ignored either. If they don't get answered at the end, then we will endeavour to answer them on paper afterwards, like we did before. So I'm just going to move on to data now. So this particular project offers us an opportunity to collect some data around fostering that potentially we've only had either in local authorities before or and not regionally or not at all. So this has given us the opportunity in the funding to be able to do that as part of the process. Now that data will be collected will be used for 2 or 3 things. The first will be obviously to measure the success of the hub, to make sure that our numbers of referrals are increasing, that we are offering an equitable share to all local authorities, that no local authorities are losing out. So we've got those baseline figures. We need to make sure that we're increasing. We don't want any local authority to lose out. But we'll also be gaining information about the type of foster carers that are coming through, where we're recruiting well, where we need more particular groups of foster carers, and we can use that to inform our recruitment drives. But we'll also have information about what's successful in terms of our recruitment campaigns as well. And that will allow us to tweak and target our recruitment campaigns accordingly. That, in addition to the data that you collect as local authorities, and I want to be clear here, this is in addition to and not instead of your work that you do in recruitment campaigns as local authorities. That would enable us to target regional need as well. So you can still focus then on targeting areas that are very specific to your local authorities, and feeding into those regional sufficiency concerns into the regional hub, so they can do that regional piece as well and increase that pool across the board within that. We have 6 key headline data pieces that we're looking to report to the Department for Education on a monthly basis. These are an increase in inquiries, and our target for that is 30%. That's been set by the Department for Education. We want to increase the number of households that are approved, and that we would look to do that as a 20% increase rate and a 20% increase in the rate of approval. So that key data indicator of 20% increases is set for us by the Department for Education. We also want to look at an inquiry to approval and conversion rate and monitor that. Inquiry to application conversion rate, our speed in responding to initial inquiries, and those inquiries that are that go through our system and are progressed to a local authority within 1 working day. So those 6 are key indicators that we will report to the Department for Education on monthly, and that links back into that hub lead role. So the hub lead would have a key role in linking between the Department for Education, the directors, and the hub. That said, that would also be obviously supported and generated by a case management system for the hub that we are in the process of procuring and designing, and carried out by the data lead for the hub too. We do have a number of other data indicators. I'm not going to read those out because there's quite a few, but it does look at initial inquiries, the number of applications and their type and what happens to them, applications that are withdrawn, and why that might be and what happens across there, what are newly approved households, how many we get, how many spaces we get in each one, and some data around those and the primary approval type, as well as some demographic metrics around those things and age. Much of that is part of your Ofsted return, and it would remain for local authorities to continue to make that Ofsted return. Most of the data that you would normally collect at an initial inquiry will be collected by the hub, and will be then uploaded onto your systems. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But some of that standard data that you would normally collect as part of your initial visits and assessment processes will continue to be collected by yourselves. There will be a transfer back of data to the hub because we do need to be able to track potential foster carers that have obviously applied, and we need to know whether or not they've gone on to application, assessment, and approval. So there is a two-way share of data within that, and we are in the process of working on that information sharing agreement and the information governance that surrounds that across all your local authorities. In terms of frequency of collection, I think I've already mentioned that generally we're looking at monthly in terms of reporting. That said, you will all have your own local authority dashboards, and I'm under the impression at the moment in the system that we're designing that they would update daily, but please don't hold me to that as we haven't finalised any data system yet, but that is what we're aiming for. So there would be a daily update into your systems, but at the moment I can't guarantee that, but that wouldn't be for anyone to collect. That would just be in a dashboard format and automated by the case management system, with formal reporting being monthly, and any returns that local authorities are expected to do are as they are now. So they're your standard statutory returns. We'll be adding an additional return to you as local authorities other than to re-upload your data. Most of that really, but generally most of the data will be collected at the hub as it would be for your initial contacts. That will be transferred and uploaded into your data management systems, but obviously initial visit onwards, any data that's collected at that point, including things like DBS checks, that sort of stuff, that's for local authorities to collect and report as usual. How will data be collected? Generally through a case management system that we're showing here, and obviously via that interaction with the prospective foster carer and the fostering support practitioner. In terms of what happens after that referral to the local authority, then obviously that's your normal processes in collecting. But there, like I say, well, there will be an upload version coming back to the hub for those key questions. I think I've covered most of it. I'm sure there'll be some questions on that, but again, please do put them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we'll try and get them as soon as we can. Next slide, please. So I don't know if you're able to zoom in on this or not, Jordan. It's quite a busy document in it. The slides will be shared with you. So this is our flow diagram for a potential case management system. And I'm particularly interested in the green and blue sections there. The green and blue sections are the two sections that the prospective foster carer links in with. And it feels like a two-step process, very much. They make their initial contact in the green section, and the blue section is where the hub makes the contact back. Now, you can see that there are lots of little boxes there, and they are, I guess, decision-making boxes about how that particular inquiry is received and managed and processed on. So they're about the system. It won't feel like there are lots of decision-making processes for your prospective foster carer. They will have that two-step, the green step that they make and the blue step that we contact them back on. The rest of it is how we make that process smoothly and how that behind the scenes bits work. Are you able to scroll along a little bit? I don't know if you can. It might be worth just going back to the big one. But that's it. Yeah, grab it and go.
I can scroll.
That's it. The orange bit. That's I couldn't remember the color of it. And I didn't know whether I was going to put when I pointed left or right if that's your left or right. So when you look at the system now, you'll see that from that blue bit, and indeed from the green bit, there is the potential for keep warm. Many of you have really good keep warm processes. We're in the process of designing our keep warm flow, but there will be that option within the hub. So to link in and maintain that offer as we do. Once that initial contact back has been made, there's a few key decision-making processes there that you can see. The most general one we're expecting is a straight referral to you as a local authority, and that's the orange box, where you can accept or decline that referral. But you can see that there's some other things that could happen, and potentially that might be things like referring to other types of care, such as supported lodgings, and those sorts of things, as well as the keep warm. And obviously there is the potential there for it, for the inquiry to not progress if they don't meet key criteria. But we're endeavouring for that not to be the case. What you can see also there, though, is a grey box linking into your information management system. Now, the next slide, please. And the orange section and the grey section are just highlighted slightly more here for you to see. So we aim for our case management system to have a hub portal for local authorities to come back in and accept those referrals and to upload data. Our plans is that this is in two phases. Phase one is to a degree a manual transfer of data with system files. You already enter your data manually at the moment onto your case management system, so it's not an additional workload. It just means you're kind of carrying it on as you were before, but instead of getting it from whatever your recording method currently is, you're now getting it directly from the hub. This is the particular method that is being used in the Northeast at the moment as we speak. We do plan to do a phase two where it's an automatic transfer of data. Now, the reason we're not doing that straight away is simply due due to the time constraints on getting the hub up and running. We do need to go live in April, and in order to have an API, I think is the correct term, that links our hub to our case management system to your case management systems, involves liaising with and working with those partner organisations such as Liquid Logic, Mosaic, etc. We do plan to do that. It's just that sometimes that takes a little more time. So yes, initially we might have to carry on as we are, so to speak, but we are looking to make it a completely automated process in the future if we can. Next slide, please. There'll also be, as I did speak before, a two-way system, again, from your case management system up to the hub staff portal, and this will allow you to offer those updates. This is probably the only slight addition piece of work, and that's where you're uploading what's happening to those inquiries into the staff portal. There'll be an electronic format for doing that. You should have capacity within your local authority to provide that, because we're increasing the capacity slightly by obviously being that single front door. And again, in the long run, we look to make that an electronic process as opposed to a human one. But in between, at the moment, it will be a human update. But we will make it as streamlined as we possibly can. Next slide, please. So that's it for data. And then the final section is about our foster carer engagement. We're really keen to make sure that our current foster carers have had a chance to look at our project, to make sure that they've co-produced it with us and co-designed it, and making sure that they have their say on what they need and what works for them as foster carers and what they would have liked at their initial phase on working through. In order to do that, we've set up a participation group for foster carers. They've already met for the first time last week and are due to meet again in a fortnight's time. It was an initial meeting last week, a kind of get to know you one and get to know the project. And then really that group is going to overview and input into our hub design. So there's an additional chance for them to do that formally at a workshop that's coming in February, where they'll be looking at co-designing the hub support offer. So right at the beginning, I said that there would be a support offer for prospective foster carers right at the beginning, where we spoke about them having a buddy from experienced foster carers straight away. And we want our foster carers input in designing that support offer and what that flow diagram looks like. They will also have input on our branding, the hub name, website, comms, and testing of the case management system's user interface. So the bit that prospective foster carers use, we'll ask for their help on testing that to make sure that that works and that gives a positive experience for prospective foster carers within that. They've already had a brief oversight on our branding and commented and thought about that. And they've been given a survey on potential hub names that they've fed back into over the last 7 days. And then when they meet again next week, they'll be having a final input on that when we decide the hub name next Thursday. And they'll also start looking at key branding features in conjunction with the comms participation group as well. Next slide, please. This just is an oversight of our project groups, so that you can see there's governance of the project completely in terms of the steering group board. They meet monthly. That's of representatives from the 2 lead local authorities, Cornwall and Wiltshire, as well as director level input and Department for Education input, and myself and our delivery partner Mutual Ventures are on that board. Our operations group, which has a link lead from every local authority in the region, meets fortnightly. So usually we'll say direct questions to your link lead for your local authority first. In general, that's your fostering lead. Okay, for most local authorities. And then we have a number of groups there targeting each design phase of the hub that meet as necessary. So the ones that are meeting regularly at the moment are the information governance project team, the data and IT team, the comms team, and the fostering participation team. And they're working on data sharing agreements, data KPIs, information governance, the comms campaign, and obviously the foster caring participation group are overseeing some of the work in the design phase that we're doing. So, and generally they'll meet fortnightly, or until that particular phase of work has finished, and then we can restart again when needed again, depending on what's going on in the project at any given point. But the two in grey meet on a regular basis, irrespectively, to oversee the work. Next slide, please. Okay, here we are. We're over to you, question and answers. So hopefully we've got some questions from you. Let's see if we can answer some of those.
Great. Thanks, Vicky. So the first question is, do you need to be a social worker to apply for a foster care support officer role?
No, is the answer to that. So although it's not formally designed yet, we weren't necessarily assuming that those roles would be specifically foster carers. We'd love you to have some experience if you can. But those of you who already, there are many of you in the region who are already working at that role and are really, really good at it. So, you know, we'd very much like to hear from you when the time comes.
Maybe, Vicky, you could talk a little bit more about some of the qualities that they're looking for in that role. Obviously, you know, not needing to be a social worker, but what other kind of things can people bring to that role?
So we'd really like people, first of all, that are warm and good with people. So, you know, if you can work well with people, give that warm feeling straight away, you bond well with them, help people to relax. Also, you need to have good information knowledge about fostering, particularly if you've got fostering knowledge within a local authority as well. So it doesn't just have to be that, so it could be an IFA, but if you've got a regional knowledge of fostering within that particular area, then that would be useful to us. We don't expect you to know about all of the region. There's 15 local authorities. That would be a bit scary, but you might know about 2 or 3, and you might have really, really good knowledge about one. So some good baseline knowledge about fostering, and if you've got some additional about particular local authorities, that would be great. But generally being that warm, human kind of person that bonds well and builds relationships quickly, particularly over different forms of communication. So some of this communication, let's be honest, is not going to be face to face. It's going to be on phone call basis, or potentially even email or chat forms. So it's about being able to build those relationships quickly over a number of formats.
Great. Thanks, Vicky. Another question is around, you mentioned the Northeast and the Pathfinder work that they're doing. Are you able to share some of the kind of key learning or information that's coming out from there? How is it working in the Northeast?
So I have some, basically. So they went live towards the end of September. We've had some figures for the following month from that. We only have the one update so far. The number of inquiries that they've had looks to be positive. It looks to be about 2/3 of what they would expect in a year in the first month or so. Now that's great. What we don't know yet is how many of those have progressed to applicant approval, because that obviously takes more time. We're getting the impression so far that there is a general spread of inquiries across the local authorities that are part of that group. There's 12 of them. In our community of interest where we meet, they presented to us last week. Like every new project, they've had some teething issues, I guess, around their case management system, and they've tweaked those, and they gave us some information that we might like to put into to ours to make sure that, you know, we obviously learn from that learning, and hopefully we'll have a bit more information from them about that. What we do have from them as well is some of the branding and communications work that they've done that can feed into our comms work as well.
Thanks, Vicky. And then I guess just something around the kind of long-term prospects for this work. Is this something that you're hoping to kind of continue past the next year?
Yes, we are. Now, I know I said that funding's up until March 2025, and it is, because that's when the financial envelope of the current government ends. That doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to fund it after 2025. It just means that at the moment, we don't know quite what that looks like. We've got a number of options. Now, potentially, the next government, whether it be the same or a different one, could still choose to fund the work. I wouldn't be surprised at that to be the case at all. Let's be honest, children's placement sufficiency challenges are not going to go away just because one government period ends and a new one starts. So for there to continue to be a focus on children's services, I would expect that to still be there. That said, in a worst case scenario, if they, and they, I mean, the next government or this government decide not to continue funding this work, what would we do? Well, actually, part of the work from from April 24 to March 25, once the hub is up and running and running smoothly, we would expect there to be work going on about the success of the project, the business case around it, how it's financially viable now it's set up to continue to running. And that way we would then look to go back to local authorities to see if they would then like to contribute to funding if we weren't given anything from a national level. So there is still work going on about how the work would continue. But we do like to cover all bases. But ideally, we would still be funded by the government. If not, we would look then for it to be a success, hence the reason with some of the data, to be able to present that and a business case to the local authorities for them to group together to fund, obviously with economies of scale, hopefully, in the long run, money than spending it. But those are the plans.
Great. Thanks, Vicky. So we've just hit Q2, and I know we're planning on wrapping up, but just one final quick question is, are all local authorities in the Southwest involved?
Yes. So all 15. So I say 15, a little bit tongue in cheek. The 15th local authority is the Isles of Scilly. The Isles of Scilly pair with Cornwall for this particular project. So there is 14 local authorities, but the Isles of Scilly are represented by their links with Cornwall's for this particular one. But all of the rest, yeah, are participating in this project.
Great. Thanks, Vicky. I think that's it in terms of time for questions.
Thanks very much. The recording will be shared with you over the next couple of weeks, along with an answer sheet to any questions that we haven't managed to answer today. And the slides as well will be shared with you also.